I get a lot of messages from people who love looking at tiny things, but feel a little stuck when the gear starts to cost more than a weekend getaway. You're probably wondering whether a 2000X microscope is really worth the price tag, or if you'll end up with a piece of glass that looks great on paper, but turns into a drawer ornament after a few weeks. That's the exact angle I'm taking today: real-world value, everyday usability, and the hidden trade-offs that most product pages gloss over. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of work this microscope is built for. The AmScope T670B is marketed as a professional infinity system, which means the optics are designed to keep the image flat across the entire field of view, even at the highest magnifications. For a hobbyist who's stepping up from a beginner 400X kit, the jump to 40X 2000X is huge. It opens doors to things like detailed diatom identification, forensic fiber analysis, and even low-magnification photomicrography of insects or plant structures. If you're the type who likes to slide a slide into a tube and instantly see a crisp, distortion-free image, the Infinity design really shines. Now, who should actually consider buying this? If you're a student in a biology or materials science program who needs to capture images for lab reports, the Trinocular port is a practical gateway to a camera without having to buy a separate adapter. The backward-facing nosepiece gives you room to attach a DSLR or a dedicated microscope camera, and the space also makes it easier to adjust lighting without bumping your head on a bulky headstock. For educators who need a workhorse that can survive the occasional drop or a hurried setup before class, the wide voltage range, 85230V, means you can plug it into almost any power source without worrying about compatibility. On the flip side, if your primary goal is simply to look at pond water or read textbooks, you'll probably find the extra magnification range more of a gimmick than a necessity. The T670B's price lands it in a bracket where a lot of users start to question whether they'll actually use the 2000X setting. Real-world experience shows that at those extreme levels you need high-quality slides, proper immersion oil, and a steady hand or a mechanical stage to avoid a blurry mess. If you're not prepared to invest in those accessories, you may end up frustrated, watching the image wobble like a shaky video call. Let's walk through a day in the lab with this microscope. I set it up on a sturdy 12-inch optical bench, which is the size most people have on a desktop. The first thing you notice is the LED illumination system. It's a wideband LED that runs on anything from 85 to 230 volts, so you can power it from a standard wall outlet or a portable battery pack for field work. The light is surprisingly even across the whole field, which matters when you're trying to capture the faint details of a thin section of leaf tissue. The intensity is adjustable via a dial, and you can dim it down low enough to avoid bleaching delicate samples, a small but often overlooked advantage. Switching from low to high magnification is smoother than you might expect. The 8-position nosepiece clicks into place with a solid feel, and because the design is backward, the body doesn't get in the way of the slide or your camera. I tried a 100x oil immersion objective on a stained blood smear, and the image stayed crisp across the whole field. The Infinity optics eliminated the curvature you sometimes see with finite systems, so the cell walls didn't appear as if they were bulging out toward the edge. That's the kind of practical strength you only notice when you're actually comparing slides side by side. But there are a couple of practical weaknesses that matter after the purchase. First, the Trinocular port, while handy, isn't a plug-and-play solution. You'll need a separate camera that matches the 23mm tube size, and you might have to tinker with focus and exposure settings to get a usable image. The system doesn't come with a built-in camera, so the total cost can climb quickly if you factor that in. Second, the magnification range is impressive on paper, but the highest settings, 1600x 2000x, can reveal the grain of the slide glass itself. If you're using inexpensive slides, you'll see scratches and imperfections that mask the specimen. In practice, that means you either invest in high-quality cover slips or accept that you'll be limited to about 1000x for clean images. Another consideration is the ergonomics of prolonged use. The head is relatively lightweight, which reduces neck strain if you're peering through it for a half hour, but the focus knobs are a bit stiff compared to higher-end models. I found myself having to apply a little extra torque when fine-tuning at 2000x, which can be tiring if you're doing a series of measurements. That's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if you plan on using the microscope for extended